We now go to Brazil. We greet our participants in Key TV Comunicaciones, Rio de Janeiro. Welcome. Good afternoon. I would like to say that the global leadership strategies and the small and medium companies in countries such as Brazil, Mexico, or Argentina can be compared to the ones in bigger countries, such as those in the U.S. or Europe.
Yes, would you repeat the question, please?
I would like to know whether the strategies, the leadership strategies, could be the same, both for the business companies from Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina, as compared to the strategies for the small and medium businesses in the U.S. and the European countries, or the first world countries?
The answer is yes, and obrigado. I have learned to say thank you in Portuguese. Yes, the strategies should be and can be the same, recognizing the cultural differences that we alluded to previously.
And from Brazil, we now go to Panama. We would like to greet the high executives of the Canal Zone area, which are now part of our long list of participants at our teleconferences. We greet people from Panama, and we hear the question from the Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá, Panama City. Sí, buenos días. ¿Cómo un gerente puede combinar estabilidad, administración y precios? Could you repeat that question, please?
¿Puede repetir la pregunta si es tan amable?
Okay. How will you blend
¿Cómo se pueden combinar?
a manager looking for stability,
Un gerente puede combinar
looking
una
for
persona buscando
price?
estabilidad, una persona buscando costos?
I did not quite hear the
No
question.
escuché muy
Claudia,
bien la pregunta.
por favor, traslade traduzcan la pregunta al señor Schultz, si es tan amable.
I believe it's a combination of stability and cost management.
How will you blend stability and cost management in terms
¿Cómo
of...
se compara estabilidad?
All right. Well, first of all, stability comes from good management, providing that stability doesn't lead to stagnation. Change comes from leadership, as I've previously stated or just stated. And cost management is constantly subject to change. So therefore you have stability on one side and cost management on the other, and there has to be a meld or a blend between the two elements for an organization to succeed.
I think another part of that equation, Stan, is that a company has to strike a balance between being operations-driven and customer-focused. When you think about being operations-driven, you have to take into consideration your price, your productivity, your profitability, and the percentages, the margins, if you will, all of the aspects of cost management. And yet, on the customer-focused side, you're really dealing with your people, you're dealing with how you reward and recognize your people, and I think how you grow your people. So there is a balance there, and I think that relates directly to the stability and cost management factor.
And let's go now to Mexico. We greet all our participants there. We're talking to the Universidad Tecnológica de Coahuila, Ramos Arizpe, Coahuila. Welcome. Thank you. What is your suggestion to motivate an attitude change towards a cooperative and open attitude and make a global change at a superior level so that we can have an exceptional organization?
Well, globalization is becoming more and more vital today in the world economies as the world basically becomes smaller, with telecommunications, with the ability to communicate internationally in a matter of milliseconds. Globalization is extremely important, recognizing competition and recognizing cultural differences. It's very important now for organizations that wish to expand and become more successful to look upon markets outside of their own countries.
Very well. And now we'll go to another city in Mexico, Nuevo León, from the Comisión Federal de Electricidad, Monterrey, Nuevo León. Go ahead. Good morning. My question is the following. The team success is contingent to the team leader or to all the members?
Well, any effort made by a group to act together cohesively is only as good as the weakest link, you might say, in that chain. Therefore, every member of the team is vital to the successful performance of the group. The team leader, of course, is there to moderate, to motivate, to organize, and to see that duplications do not take place. But to answer your question specifically, each individual member of the team is vital to the success of the entire team.
I think there are a couple of other dimensions, and I think Stan touched on some very important ones. Remember that the different role between the leader and the player, or that is the coach's job primarily, even in the workplace, is to formulate a strategy. The players are responsible, or the workers, that is, are responsible for implementing that strategy. And so the challenge is that the leader of a team has to be able to communicate clearly to his or her players so that they will implement the strategy. Let me also just back up quickly on the previous question, and the individual who asked about the globalization. Two things that you should think about in terms of improving your performance and becoming a best-in-class type company. First of all, examine the best practices of companies around the world. And secondly, set a benchmark so that your performance is continuously improving.
And now we greet our neighbors here at the city of Tijuana. Our next question comes from the Instituto Politécnico Nacional, CITER Tijuana, Mexico. Thank you. Our questions are the following. What is the importance of the organization in your culture, and what happens when there's a state of crisis and it's prolonged for a long time, and what can a leader do to return to stability? It is easy to say that to motivate people, you need to recognize them, but that's not so when you have economic problems. What can you do to motivate people in poverty?
Those were two questions, and I will try to answer both quickly. First of all, I enjoyed hearing you say your culture. We've got to stop talking about our culture and your culture. We have to start thinking in this smaller world and with globalization of one culture as it pertains to business organizations, with, of course, the differences, the social differences. Crisis, answering the question regarding crisis, what do you do in case of a prolonged crisis? You analyze. You realize that crises occur and will always occur. There's no such thing as a smooth pond with no ripples. What you do, of course, is analyze what the crisis is, what is causing it, and find alternative answers to how you're going to solve your problem. Call upon your team members, call upon your co-workers and your managers at all levels and solicit their opinions. But crises can be overcome, and frequently will with quick action. You must recognize when you have a crisis situation and deal with it promptly.
I think in addition to that, you have to keep in mind that once you've analyzed the fact that you have a crisis, first of all, if you get to the crisis point, you're in deep trouble. I think the challenge of leadership is to anticipate a crisis and try to avert the crisis. But once you do have a crisis, I think the style of leadership that you need to find in an organization is a fix-it leadership style, like a Lee Iacocca of Chrysler, who came in and fixed the problems. Because if you don't fix the problems quickly, you will have a drop in morale, and you will have disinterested employees who basically abandon ship, who want to get out of the company. So you need somebody to come in and fix the problem and set the company in the right direction.
And I might add, I agree with what Tom has added, that sometimes it is very important to bring in someone from the outside. There's an expression, you cannot see the trees for the forest, and at times, and it's very important at times to bring in someone from the outside that can view the situation objectively.
And now we'll greet the participant from the State of Mexico, and we'll go to the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, Facultad de Estudios Superiores, Cuautitlán, Mexico. Welcome. Thank you. When the motivational aspect is based on the economics and that runs out, what options could you propose to the employees? Thank you.
Your question had to do with the motivational aspects, and of course motivation is extremely important to motivate a worker, to motivate a manager is extremely important. And again, the key word is recognition, which I dwell upon constantly, and I face it over and over again as I work with different corporations and different organizations. The unproductive team is the team where each worker or member of the group builds a wall around themselves and will only deal with situations that they feel specifically pertain to what they are doing. You will have no motivation in that case. And again, recognizing people for their performances is penultimate.
Mr. Hinton?
I think the other side of that equation is, and if I understood your question correctly, you were saying, what do you rely on once the economics go sour or go bad? How do you continue to motivate your employees? And I think you're in a tough dilemma, a very serious dilemma in that situation, because you have to have a strong economic base in order to motivate your employees. But I would say that two things that you can do in order to keep your employees motivated is, first of all, empower them. Allow them to come up with answers to the problems. You will find, if you will trust your employees to think creatively, that they'll come up with some wonderful solutions. I think the second thing that you should do is to open your company to innovation. One of the great companies in the United States, the 3M company in St. Paul, Minnesota, 3M mandates 25% innovation in its products every year, so it never stagnates, and that's what I would encourage you to do. Both empower your people and be innovative in your products and services.
With your permission, I'd like to address this again, because motivation to me is the key tool with which today in the organizational structure. I've prepared what I call my 10 commandments for leader managers, and they're available, incidentally, if anyone would want to write in. They're available in Spanish and English, and I won't read all 10 commandments to you, but basically they deal with commitment, establishing a climate for change, formulating a vision of the future, building a team, which we've spoken about, communicating, developing a strategy, climate for dialogue, motivating others by helping them move toward their ideal selves, and taking a personal interest in the development of each of your people, engaging the progress on the basis of critical success factors. Those are my 10 commandments.
And now let's go back to Panama. This question comes from the Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá, Centro Regional de La Chorrera. Welcome. Yes, good morning. It looks like there's an echo. Again? Yes, my question is, what is the strategy that the leader of a large company should follow in order to be successful in the globalization process? And within his company, should he make considerable changes in the work practices? Thank you.
Well, when engaging in a globalization strategy, learn what your competition is doing in the other countries. Don't barge into a region or a country without having a strong knowledge of what those who are purveying the same product or service are doing within that particular area. And don't try to do too many things at one time. Too many crises are too difficult to deal with. So investigate and analyze what your competition is doing.
I'll say, just to add, Armando, that stay tuned. I'm going to address that very question in a few minutes. So.
And now let's go to Cerro Azul, Veracruz, Mexico, Instituto Tecnológico de Cerro Azul. Welcome. Mr. Stanley, you've talked about a balance, striking a balance between the change and no change within organizations. How can we apply this concept correctly and point it to good leadership without showing weakness in the actions that we will take?
Well, that's a very good question. Of course, leaders love change, and managers like things to remain static or stable. The problem with stability, which is a great thing to have in any organization, is that stagnation can enter into the picture if one doesn't recognize that changes are occurring. Therefore, you need a bond or a binding between your leaders and your managers. And I am not saying that a manager cannot be a leader or a leader cannot be a manager. But within every organization, generally, you have people that adopt one role or the other, and they must work together. Change is a very good thing, and to ignore change is to plant the seeds of failure.
Let's greet the people from Medellín, Colombia, wonderful city. This question comes from the Federación Nacional de Comerciantes. Good morning. Our question is the following. Leadership nowadays is based as a lifestyle that is combined with the direction and communicative aspects. How can you achieve harmonization with the leadership and management when there is no balance between these two aspects?
Well, you have to achieve that balance because that balance is required. That balance is necessary. Incidentally, I was in Medellín, Colombia, about a year ago and met with several of the, through the auspices of FENALCO, met several of the business community there. And my greetings to those people. But you have to achieve that. You cannot allow there to be a schism or a division between those two elements.
Let's go now to Venezuela. Greetings to the Universidad Central de Venezuela, City of Caracas. Good morning. We would like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak and participate at the Universidad Central de Venezuela. This is our question. Globalization, does it have the tendency to foster accountability? You said that a leader should motivate employees, but how can a leader motivate uninterested or apathetic employees?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't have uninterested employees. If your employees are not interested in the job that they're performing in the company that they're working for, this should be identified early on. And one of my 10 commandments is that you work with the personal development of your individual employees. If you have people that remain disinterested in their job and in the organization they are with, perhaps they would feel better moving on to a different occupation or a different company. But find out what the areas of dissatisfaction might be, because to me disinterest implies dissatisfaction. Treat your employees as individuals and make them aware of the importance of working together as a team.
A couple of additional thoughts there. Don't let the term globalization scare you. Globalization is really just another word for opportunities beyond your own borders, whether your border happens to be a country or a nation or a continent. I think that's number one. Secondly, when you talk about accountability and the leader's role in trying to motivate and inspire people, I would certainly concur with what Stan just told you, but remember that I think sometimes employees become detached or removed from the focus and direction of a company. And so it's very important to use technology such as teleconferencing, video tapings from the senior leadership and send those out to the different plants around the country. One of the leaders in the United States in this type of technology, I would encourage you to contact them, is a division of Caterpillar, and that is the company right here in San Diego called named Solar Turbines. They do a wonderful job of utilizing a studio such as this to convey message and information to their people. And I think that's a great way to keep people in the fold, attached to the theme and direction of your company.
Absolutely, I concur completely. The key word is communicate. Communicate.
And let's go to Querétaro now, Querétaro, Mexico. Greetings to the people from Mave Componentes. Thank you very much. We know that change is important in our way of behaving within organizations, but we would like to know whether there are things within an organization that we should never change. If that's the case, what are those things?
Well, every organization that is successful is built upon a solid foundation of those things that originally contributed to the growth and the success of the organization. Some of these things are difficult to define, but a niche within the marketplace, for example, that has proven through the years to be your best opportunity for success. These types of things should not be abandoned. The changes that should be recognized are those that are political, economic, and social. But the elements that built the company, built the organization, and made it successful should not be abandoned.
Let me just add to that and give you 5 principles that I think you always want to adhere to. You talk about maintaining the positive things that work in your company. Here are 5 principles that I would encourage you to always hold dear. Number 1, trust. Secondly, fairness. You want to be fair in your dealings with people. Number 3, customer satisfaction. You have to satisfy your customers or they'll leave you. Number 4, profitability. You have to maintain your profits. And number 5, reward and recognize your employees.
And let's greet now our participants from the state of Hidalgo at the Universidad Tecnológica de Tulancingo, Hidalgo, Mexico. Yes, thank you. Our question is, how can the president of a company should achieve accountability in the long term, since Mr. Harry Truman said that the buck stopped with him? Stop there.
Yes. Repeat that question. I'm well aware that Harry Truman said the buck stops here. But what was the question again, please?
Yes. How can a president assume a mistake in the short term, since Mr. Truman said that the buck stopped there with him as a president?
How can the head of an organization accept the responsibility? He must accept the responsibility. Otherwise, he's not an effective leader. Even though a mistake or a failure took place as a result of a subordinate, the president, the leader of any organization, must stand behind his organization and take full responsibility for anything that occurs, whether it's positive or negative.
Let's now go to the Universidad de Guadalajara, Centro Universitario de la Costa, Puerto Vallarta, Jalisco. Go ahead. Puerto Vallarta, go ahead. Hello? Hello. Good morning. We are calling from the Hotel Citar Puerto Vallarta, Jalisco, Mexico. We are a service company. What should we stress more importance, leadership or administration? And secondly, what is the difference between the motivational and recognition aspects?
Well, first of all, you asked 2 questions. The first question, there should be a blend between the 2 elements. One is not more important than the other. And as far as the teamwork, as far as motivation is concerned and recognition is concerned, as I've stated several times this morning, one of the principal ways to motivate an employee is to recognize them for their efforts and for their performance.
Mr. Hinton?
I think that leadership is certainly embraces administration. I've always maintained that the primary role of a leader is to inspire and grow the organization. But again, once the leaders have defined their vision and direction, they need to turn to managers to be able to implement. And I think that's what administration is. Administration is really managing the day-to-day implementation of a strategic plan or a strategic vision. With respect to your second question there, where you talk about motivation versus recognition, you have to be able to encourage people to not just do a good job, but really go above and beyond the call of duty in your organization. And when they do that, it's essential that you recognize or reward them for that in order to encourage other employees to follow suit and to also be role models for going above and beyond the call of duty.
And now let's go to the Federal District in Mexico, to the Comisión Federal de Electricidad, Auditorio Atoyac, Mexico. Yes, good morning. The question is to Mr. Schultz and has to do with the following. A global company has shares, has a structure and operations in more than 2 countries. What happens is that these countries have political and economic systems, different religion, different culture. And these companies also need foreign leaders for the host countries where they're working. What would the successful function be, say, in a concrete example? What should these foreign leaders do in a foreign country and for this company to achieve success within the scheme of things?
Well, first of all, a leader in a foreign country should naturally be aware of the political, the economic, and the social elements within that country in order to better serve or lead the company that he's representing. Without this awareness, and that's the key word again, awareness, there would be great obstacles, and the fact that you have to recognize that there are these cultural differences that we've discussed previously, and that you have to deal with them. You cannot bring, and there have been many problems, particularly when the Japanese first came into this country and took over leadership of many companies.